Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful, fantabulous, and mystical day. Over here on the mystical side of life, we're just getting things started, or should I say, we got things started. In today's episode, we're going to be analyzing one of the pieces that I have currently completed. But, FYI, in case you don't know who I am the Mystic Fox, the wonderful, fantabulous, whatever, Emmanuel Aguilar. And today we're going to be examining the piece of, I believe his name is Nesskain. I'm probably butchering his name to death, but in this study, I basically focused on taking apart what I liked of his piece and then making it my own, or like learning from it in a strange, I guess, way, or not a strange way, but a way. Alrighty, so first I'm going to start off by taking apart the layers to just demonstrate exactly what I did in order to kind of get the result that I got. And then we shall go forward in the layers and we shall actualize what I was trying to get across. So, here we go. The study as a whole wasn't all that difficult. What I focused on, actually, is just making notes. So, like always with all of my studies, I start them off by actually writing down what I like. For this scenario in particular, I really like the shapes, the metallic gold approach that he had there, and the face proportions, because I like the very illustrative kind of beard that he has, which is very common, I guess, for characters, but for Nesskain, I enjoy his characters' faces. Also, beards are awesome, and why wouldn't you like beards? So, I wrote down those notes. Now, I like to focus on one aspect of things, of each piece that I do, just to kind of get a better idea of what I'm doing, or a better idea of what I'm trying to succeed or accomplish, so that way when I finish the study I know when to stop. And in this scenario, I actually didn't do a fully refined thing because that's not what I was trying to do. Alrighty, so here's the line work. Notice I did add a trident, and that was because I wanted to see if I would be able to add that gold kind of a texture or color method kind of in values to that and succeed, and I think to a degree I did. But I started off by first laying in all of the layers that I was going to use. So first, as you can see on the right hand side, I laid in the base, which was like a darker blue. Now you can see in the actual color picker tool, if I color pick this and this, it's slightly more into the cyan, I believe that's the name of it, in the actual one on the left, but in mine it's more towards the blues. I did that very specifically because sometimes when you're color picking, because of the method that they painted in or colored in, sometimes the layering can be a little fidgety. So I just chose to go with the basic colors because it's an examination of the work. I didn't care so much about the background as I did about the subject. So I did this, and then I laid in a layer with the base tone of the character's skin color. I did this simply because I didn't want to have to go through the hassle of laying in like paints, like a layering system in terms of like first you lay in your reds, then you lay in your blues, and yada yada, things of that nature, ranging from like you go into warms and then cools and then warms, and then that's just the skin tone. Because for this character in particular, if you look close at it, it looks very defined in terms of like the colors that are used and the values that are used. I believe that it was because they did it in black and white first, then they went back and painted it, or they did the line work for it and then they went back and they just inserted colors, because the line work is very crisp, and you usually only get this type of line work like here, where it's around the belt and around the outer rims and just all the line work in the rib cage in general. It's very stroke-like, so I feel like they did a lot of or spent some good time doing the line work, and then went back in and added the colors on a layer beneath, and then so on and so forth. But I do feel like it was important for me to actually try line work in mine because I don't really do line work very often, and as you can see, I didn't do it the same way. So what I did differently was I didn't use opacity, or I used opacity actually. When in the piece, they did not use opacity. So if you look closely to the lines, you can see that the lines are closer to if I were to just use a straight brush. I like to squish my brushes because it makes them more colorful, or more colorful. Yeah, because black is a colorful color. It makes them more sleek. So if I kind of rub my stylus on there lightly, you can see those strokes. So you would essentially, you can see how they were to have done those kind of lines and strokes. Now, because it's Photoshop, you can also manipulate that. You can use the line tool. I don't know exactly how this guy paints, but I do know that his line work is very precise, and they look very natural and free flowing, which is why I believe he used this method of line work instead of like mine, because this was after the fact, by the way. I looked at how he was doing his lines, and I actually just played with the brush on the side here. And so I made 2 lines, and then I went back and I did them with my pressure sensitivity on. Now you see how my lines aren't as dark as the lines with no opacity. That's important because the way he layered these lines on, he needed that to show width, and I didn't do that in mine. So just to clear that up, so that there's no confusion, I understand that I didn't do that correctly, but there's a purpose behind that. The purpose is because my focus for the study, like I said earlier, wasn't about the line work as much as it was for the coloring of the gold kind of jewelry that he has on. So moving forward, we inserted, oops, close that. We inserted some of the colors. Now, if you look at it from closely, you can clearly see that the colors are not, the cleanest of colors like he does here with the nice blending. He does his blending by simply putting one of the colors on either side of the range. And if you think of it in terms of a rectangle, okay, here's where I did those. What he did was he selected 1, 2, and 3, and he used this type of method to shade throughout the whole piece with varying different types of shading within that. So he does this here, where he does this slightly darker version of red with a slightly lighter tone, and you can see this if you color pick it. He goes more into the gray line right here, and he goes slightly darker. He goes down. So he's still using the principle of the arcing of colors for skin tones, but he is using it more in the grayer tones, which I have noticed recently that the grayer you go, the more realistic it looks, and I believe that that's because of the way that the light reacts with the colors and the blood and the skin in general, because I believe it's refracting of colors or refracting of light on liquids, but I would have to do more research into that. Point is, the color spectrum that he uses is similar to this. So what I went and did was I selected the colors that were the brightest, the colors that were the darkest, and the midtones. And so here, on this left-hand side, I can demonstrate. See how I did this little piece right here? And that, I essentially did that on mine, only I did a color palette. So if we look at my color palette, here are the colors that I picked. This is the color in between the muscles. This is the color of the character, this base. This is the lightest color. And then for the gold, I only tried to use 3. So for the darkest, we got the darkest value. For the gold, the mid. And then the bright part is very interesting. So when I was looking at his actual piece, granted his darkest dark and my darkest dark are not the same. And let me explain that a little bit more in terms of why I did this. So when I was doing the kind of research of just kind of analyzing this and figuring out why he was doing it that way, I realized that by making the color a little bit darker, I can accentuate the part that's the lightest because of the contrast of the colors beside each other. So it doesn't look amazing from up close, but if you zoom out, I don't know if you guys can see this navigator bar over here. If you if it's fairly zoomed out, it looks very pungent. It punches your face and your eye to look here. Not to say it's better, but to say that it has more of a contrast, and I like that, and I noticed that through like making a mistake, and it's nice to come across these. This is also why I highly encourage people to kind of look at their own work and be like, oh, or just study in general when they're doing a study. Don't just follow what other people do because it looks cool. Follow it and then use a, feel free to experiment. And this is where the experimentation comes out, because I was able to find this small little thing, and it was just interesting. Now, going in further within this, I also did the same kind of principle of doing the colors for the skin tones. Like I said earlier, I selected 3, and then I just kind of inserted them where they seem to fit on the actual character itself. Granted, he did a little bit of brushwork after the fact, and I believe that he inserted like some of these scars after he did the painting portion, because right here, I don't know if you can see this, but he made a very like noticeable mistake right there, because he has a line crossing here and it's crossing on a wound, right? And the reason that that's important to see is because, not because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to point out his mistakes, but because you can see that it was inserted afterwards. It's important to know this because when you're looking at somebody's work and you're trying to like figure out how they did it, you can see here again on this belt here. The reason that that's important is because you can try to think about how they were trying to approach the layering system in terms of like making their piece. Sometimes it's better to draw things over top and paint it, and other times it's better to just insert it within the sketch and then paint it through. That way you don't have to worry about it later. But in this scenario, I feel like those scars and those little bits, like scratches, tidbits here and there, were to help improve the actual character by adding a little bit of storytelling to it. Whereas, like, if this character simply didn't have a scar, it'd be nice, but it'd be okay, but it's nicer to have that, because now as a viewer, we can see, oh, he's been through something, right? And so, granted, I didn't put that in mind, but that was because I was trying to figure out how I would do that. And by looking at it, I could see, okay, he did it after the fact. Alrighty, so now that we know this, I kind of move forward into doing the gold part of the actual ornaments and things that he has on. Now, I already explained the whole system of why I did the whole glaring thing the way I did of the actual gold, so I won't go too much into that. But it is safe to say that it is fairly similar, especially in a very small view. There are obviously things that I could improve on, but I think for this study, I think we accomplished a lot. I'm looking into doing more of these in the future, so feel free to, let me know what you think. If you think that this is a pretty good study, then, just let me know. Be like, hey, dude, I like your study. If you think that there's things that I could improve on, just let me know. There's no bad criticism here, man. We're just trying to improve, but Little things here and there help. I was also, um, this is on a side thing that I was doing. I had somebody, an anonymous person, give me a critique on the actual gesture of the character. Because another thing that was very important was the actual pose of the character in terms of how it was laid out. Now, I'm not the best at doing gestures as much as I would love to be, so I'm not even going to lie and say that my character is 100% accurate and it looks exactly like the piece of reference, because it doesn't. Simply doesn't. So I had them critique me and just let me know, hey, what can I do better? And one thing that was noted was the fact that my shoulders weren't exactly on par with the one in the on the left side. This is the one that I'm using for reference, obviously. And so I was trying to figure out why it looked strange. Looking at it now, I can clearly see. You see the bone right here, and mine doesn't have this. So if I were to follow this, it would greatly improve my piece. But I didn't follow it, so it doesn't. I wonder if that's going to be easily seen. So you see right here where the neck is? Right there. I could have improved that on here. Made that very more like stand outy. I did insert it, but looking at it now, there's always something you could have improved. So making sure that there's little things like this that you can kind of look at even after the fact is really important. So I'm going to end it there, ladies and gentlemen. If you like the show, make sure you smash that like button. Like I said earlier, comment down below and let me know what you think. And as always, guys, don't forget to stay mystical.